The rain hammered against the palace windows that November night. Inside the corridors of Buckingham Palace, a young royal guard named Thomas Morrison stood frozen outside a sitting room door. His heart pounded in his chest. What he had just heard through the crack in that door could destroy everything. Thomas had served the royal family for 3 years. He took pride in his silence, his discipline, his loyalty. But tonight was different. Tonight, he heard something that turned his blood cold. It started an hour earlier. Thomas was making his usual rounds through the West Wing. The palace felt heavier than normal, quieter. Most of the staff had gone home. Only a skeleton crew remained. As he passed the private sitting room near the Queen Consort's chambers, he heard raised voices. One voice he recognized immediately. It belonged to Camilla, the Queen Consort herself. The other voice was unfamiliar. A woman, smooth, calculated, cold. Thomas should have kept walking. Protocol demanded it. But something in Camilla's tone stopped him. There was urgency there. Desperation, even. He stepped closer to the door. Before we go on, if you're loving this story, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We bring you the most shocking true stories from around the world. Stories that will leave you speechless. Through the narrow gap, Thomas could see shadows moving. Camilla was pacing. The other woman sat calmly in a high-backed chair, her silhouette sharp against the firelight. It has to look natural, the stranger said. Her voice was smooth like silk over steel. No one can suspect anything. Camilla stopped pacing. And you're certain this will work? Completely certain. The girl is young. Accidents happen all the time with children. A fall during a public event. A sudden illness. The public will mourn, but they'll move on. They always do. Thomas felt his stomach twist. The girl. They were talking about a child. But which child? Then Camilla spoke the name that made Thomas's legs go weak. Charlotte is too beloved, Camilla said quietly. The public adores her. If anything happens to her, they'll investigate everything. That's precisely why it must be flawless, the woman replied. And that's why you're paying me so well. Thomas gripped the wall to steady himself. Princess Charlotte. They were talking about Princess Charlotte, the young daughter of Prince William and Catherine, a child of only 8 years old. His mind raced. This couldn't be real. This had to be a misunderstanding. But the words were clear. The intent was clear. Camilla's voice dropped lower. When? The charity gala next week. There will be crowds, confusion, cameras everywhere. It's the perfect cover. Thomas's breath came shallow and fast. He needed to move. He needed to tell someone, but who? If he was wrong, his career was over. If he was right and went to the wrong person, he might not live to see morning. The conversation inside the room shifted. Footsteps approached the door. Thomas turned and walked quickly down the corridor, his boots echoing on the marble floor. His mind screamed at him to run, but running would draw attention. So he walked, steady, controlled. Every step felt like a lifetime. Behind him, the door opened. Is someone out there? Camilla's voice called into the hallway. Thomas didn't look back. He turned the corner and pressed himself against the cold stone wall, his heart hammering so hard he thought it might burst through his chest. He had just overheard a plot to harm a child, a royal child, and now he had to decide what to do about it. Thomas didn't sleep that night. He sat in his small quarters in the staff wing, staring at the wall. His phone sat on the table in front of him. He picked it up 3 times. Put it down 3 times. Who could he call? Who could he trust? The royal family had protocols for everything. Threats, security breaches, scandals. But what was the protocol for this? What was the protocol when the threat came from inside the family itself? By morning, Thomas had made his decision. He would go to the head of palace security, Commander Richard Hastings. Hastings was a former military man, stern but fair. If anyone would listen, it would be him. Thomas found Hastings in his office at 7 in the morning. The commander was already at his desk, reviewing security reports for the upcoming charity gala. Morrison, Hastings said without looking up. "You're early. Sir, I need to speak with you. It's urgent." Something in Thomas's voice made Hastings look up. The older man studied him for a moment, then closed the folder on his desk. "Shut the door," Thomas did. Then he told him everything. Every word he'd heard, every detail he could remember. Hastings listened without interruption. His face remained neutral, unreadable. When Thomas finished, silence filled the room. Finally, Hastings spoke. "You realize what you're saying?" "Yes, sir. You're accusing the Queen Consort of plotting to harm a child?" "The king's granddaughter." "I know how it sounds, sir. But I heard what I heard." Hastings stood and walked to the window. Outside, the palace grounds stretched out in the morning light. Guards changed shifts. Tourists gathered at the gates. "If you're wrong about this," Hastings said slowly, "your career is finished. You'll be dismissed, possibly prosecuted for slander." "I understand, sir." "And if you're right." Hastings turned back to face him. "If you're right, this could tear the monarchy apart." The two men stared at each other. "I need proof," Hastings finally said. "I can't go to the Prince of Wales with just your word. I need evidence. How do I get that, sir?" "The sitting room where you heard this conversation. There are no cameras in the private family rooms. But there might be something. A recording device. Notes. Something that woman left behind. You need to find it." Thomas felt ice in his veins. "You want me to search the Queen Consort's private rooms?" "I want you to protect a little girl," Hastings said firmly. "Whatever it takes." That afternoon, Thomas found his opportunity. Camilla had left the palace for a public appearance. The sitting room would be empty for at least 2 hours. Thomas's hand shook as he unlocked the door. He'd been given a master key by Hastings, along with strict instructions. "Get in. Find evidence. Get out. Touch nothing else." The room looked different in daylight. Elegant. Warm family photos lined the mantel. It didn't look like a place where dark plots were hatched. Thomas moved quickly. He checked the desk drawers. Nothing. He checked behind the paintings. Under the cushions, inside the flower vases, nothing. His time was running out. Then he saw it. A small leather journal on the side table, half hidden beneath a newspaper. Thomas picked it up, his heart racing. He flipped through the pages. Most of it was mundane. Appointments. Notes about events. But then he found a page that made his blood run cold. A single line. It's written in elegant handwriting. "See problem resolved by November 15th. Final payment upon completion." The date. November 15th. The charity gala. Thomas pulled out his phone and photographed the page. Then another page. And another. His hands trembled so badly the photos came out blurry, but he kept taking them. Behind him, a door creaked. Thomas spun around. A maid stood in the doorway, her eyes wide with shock. "Hush. What are you doing in here?" she whispered. Thomas froze. He knew this woman. Margaret. She'd worked at the palace for 20 years. She was loyal to Camilla. Everyone knew it. "I was checking the security of the room," Thomas said quickly, sliding the journal back onto the table. Routine inspection. Margaret's eyes went to the journal, then back to Thomas. She didn't believe him. He could see it in her face. "I need to report this," she said, reaching for her radio. Thomas moved fast. He crossed the room in 2 steps and grabbed her wrist. Not hard, but firm. "Margaret, please. Listen to me. Princess Charlotte's life is in danger. I'm trying to save her." Now Margaret stared at him. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she pulled her wrist free and stepped back. "You're mad," she whispered. She turned and ran. Thomas ran. He didn't know where else to go. Margaret would sound the alarm within minutes. He'd be arrested, questioned, possibly charged with breaking into royal quarters. The photos on his phone were his only defense. Even those might not be enough. He found Commander Hastings in the security office, speaking with 2 other guards. When Hastings saw Thomas's face, he immediately dismissed the others. "What happened?" Thomas showed him the photos. His voice shook as he explained about the journal, about Margaret, about running. Hastings studied the photos in silence. His jaw tightened. This isn't enough. It's vague. A lawyer could argue it means anything. But the date, sir. November 15th. The gala, I know. Hastings looked up. But it's not proof of intent to harm Charlotte. It could be payment for anything. A gift. A service. We need more. We don't have time for more, Thomas said desperately. The gala is in 4 days. Hastings's radio crackled to life. A voice came through, tense and urgent. Commander Hastings, we have a situation. Guard Morrison has been reported for unauthorized entry into the Queen Consort's chambers. Please advise. The 2 men locked eyes. Hastings pressed the radio button. Copy that. I have Morrison with me now. Stand by. He released the button and turned to Thomas. You need to disappear for a few hours. I'll handle Margaret and buy us time. But you need to find that woman. The one who was with Camilla? If we can identify her, connect her to anything criminal, we have a real case. How do I find her, sir? I only saw her shadow. You heard her voice. You said it was distinctive. Cold, professional. Hastings pulled up a file on his computer. There are only a handful of people who have access to the private family wings without security escort. Staff, family, and approved contractors. Start there. Thomas leaned over the screen. A list of names appeared. Dozens of them. Cleaners, cooks, tailors, advisors. Look for anyone new, Hastings said. Anyone hired in the last few months. Someone who wouldn't have a long history here. Thomas scanned the list. His eyes stopped on a name near the bottom. Alina Volkov, private consultant. Hired 6 weeks ago. Hastings pulled up her file. A photo appeared. A woman in her 40s, elegant, with sharp features and cold eyes. Dark hair pulled back severely. What kind of consultant? Thomas asked. Hastings clicked through the file. It says, Public Relations. Event Management. He frowned. But there's no detail. No background checks listed. No references. That's not normal, is it? No, Hastings said quietly. It's not. His radio crackled again. Commander, we need Morrison brought in for questioning. The Queen Consort is returning early and requesting a full security review. Hastings looked at Thomas. Go, now, find Volkov. Find out who she really is. I'll hold them off as long as I can. Thomas slipped out through a back corridor. His mind raced. Alina Volkov. The name sounded foreign. Eastern European, maybe Russian. A private consultant with no background checks. It didn't make sense, unless someone had made sure it didn't make sense. Thomas made his way to the staff directory office. A young clerk named Sarah sat behind the desk, typing on her computer. Sarah, I need a favor, Thomas said, keeping his voice casual. I'm looking for Alina Volkov, the new consultant. Have you seen her today? Sarah looked up. Oh, Miss Volkov. She's in the East Wing. She's been working on preparations for the charity gala all week. The East Wing. Where exactly? The event planning office, I think. Room 247. Thomas thanked her and left quickly. His heart pounded as he made his way through the palace. Every corner felt dangerous. Every guard he passed might be looking for him. Room 247 was at the end of a long corridor. Thomas approached carefully. The door was closed. He pressed his ear against it. Silence. He tried the handle. Locked. Thomas pulled out his keycard. It worked on most doors in the palace. He slid it through the reader. The light turned green. The door opened. The room was empty. But it didn't look like an event planning office. Papers covered a desk, photos, documents, and in the center, a laptop still open and running. Thomas moved closer. On the screen was an email, half-written. He leaned in to read it. The words made his stomach drop. Phase 1 complete. Target confirmed for November 15th. Extraction plan ready. Payment on completion as agreed. No trace. Below the message was an attachment. A floor plan. Thomas recognized it immediately. It was the layout of the charity gala venue. and on the plan, marked with a red X, was the children's area where Charlotte would be appearing. Thomas heard footsteps in the corridor. He grabbed his phone and photographed everything. The email, the floor plan, the documents on the desk. His hands moved frantically. The footsteps grew louder. He shoved his phone in his pocket and looked for another exit. There was a second door on the far side of the room. He ran for it. Behind him, the main door opened. "Who's there?" A woman's voice called out, cold, professional. It was her, Elena Volkov. Thomas threw open the far door and ran. Thomas ran through corridors he barely recognized. Behind him, shouts echoed off the stone walls. Volkov had called for security. Now the entire palace was looking for him. He couldn't go back to Hastings. Not yet. Not until he got these photos somewhere safe. Thomas ducked into a service stairwell and pulled out his phone. His hands shook as he opened his email and attached the photos. He typed a quick message to his brother, a journalist in London. "If anything happens to me, publish these. Princess Charlotte in danger. Trust no one at palace." He hit send, just as footsteps thundered down the stairs above him. Thomas pocketed his phone and kept moving down. The stairwell led to the basement level, where the old service tunnels ran beneath the palace. Most were locked off now, unused for years. But Thomas knew of one that still opened. An old escape route from World War II. He found the door hidden behind a rack of storage shelves. The lock was rusted, but his keycard still worked. The door groaned open. Thomas slipped inside and pulled it shut behind him. Darkness swallowed him whole. He turned on his phone's flashlight. The tunnel stretched ahead, narrow and damp. Water dripped somewhere in the distance. The air smelled of earth and age. Thomas moved forward, his light cutting through the black. He needed to get out of the palace, get somewhere he could think, somewhere he could figure out his next move. The tunnel sloped downward. Thomas walked for what felt like an eternity. Finally, he saw another door ahead. This one led out to the old servants' entrance, a full block away from the main palace gates. He pushed through and found himself in a narrow alley. Rain was falling again. Cold hit him like a slap. Thomas pulled up his hood and walked quickly. He needed to contact Hastings. But his phone might be traced. Everything might be traced now. He found a small cafe 2 streets away. Inside, he bought a coffee he didn't want and sat in the corner. His mind raced through everything he knew. Volkov was real. The plan was real. The gala was in 3 days. Charlotte would be there, surrounded by crowds and cameras, just like Volkov said. The perfect cover. But what could Thomas do? He was just a guard. One man with a few photos that might not be enough to convince anyone? His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "Morrison, library. 1 hour. Come alone. H." Hastings. Thomas deleted the message and left the cafe. The library was a public building near Westminster, neutral ground. Hastings wanted to meet there. It meant he couldn't talk at the palace anymore. That wasn't a good sign. Thomas arrived early and waited near the history section, pretending to browse books. Hastings appeared exactly on time, walking past without looking at him. "Follow me," Hastings murmured. "Keep distance." They made their way to a private study room in the back. Hastings closed the door and checked the windows before speaking. "They know you have evidence," he said quietly. Volkov told Camilla everything. Now they're moving up the timeline. Thomas felt ice in his chest. Moving it up to when? Tomorrow night. There's a private family dinner. Charlotte will be there. They're planning to make it look like an allergic reaction. Volkov has access to the kitchen. Tomorrow? Thomas gripped the table. "We have to warn someone, the prince. The Princess of Wales. Anyone." "I tried," Hastings said, his voice heavy. "I went to the prince's secretary this morning. Showed him your photos. He dismissed it. Said the queen consort would never harm a child. Said you were a troubled employee making wild accusations. But the evidence isn't enough. Not without context. Not without more proof." Hastings leaned forward. "But there is another way." "What way?" "You go to the press, release everything. Photos, the recording from tonight, if you got audio, the whole story. Once it's public, they can't touch Charlotte." "Too much attention." Thomas shook his head. I'll be destroyed. My career, my reputation, everything. Yes, Hastings said simply. You will be. But Charlotte will be alive. The two men sat in silence. Finally, Thomas spoke. There has to be another way. What if we confront Camilla directly? Show her we know. Force her to call it off. Too dangerous. If she feels cornered, she might accelerate everything. Do it tonight instead of tomorrow. Then we go to the king, Thomas said desperately. He's Charlotte's grandfather. He'll listen. Hastings's expression darkened. The king is complicated. His loyalty to Camilla is absolute, and he's not been well lately. The stress of this he stopped himself. No, the king is not an option. Thomas stood and paced the small room. Every option felt like a trap. Every choice led to disaster. What about the police? Yes, Scotland Yard. They investigate threats to the royal family. Already tried. They won't move without palace approval. And guess who controls palace approval right now? Thomas felt the walls closing in. So what do we do? Hastings pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. This is a journalist, someone I trust.
Ah.
Someone who will publish the story immediately if you give her the evidence. It's your choice, Morrison. Your career for Charlotte's life. Thomas picked up the card. The name read, Jennifer Walsh, The Guardian. I stared at it for a long moment. Then his phone buzzed. A message from his brother. Tom, what is this? Are you serious? Call me now. Thomas looked up at Hastings. If I do this, I need one thing from you. What? Promise me you'll make sure Charlotte doesn't go to that dinner tomorrow. Whatever it takes. Lie. Say she's sick. Say there's a security threat. I don't care. Just keep her away from that palace. Hastings met his eyes. You have my word. Thomas nodded. He picked up his phone and dialed the number on the card. The call connected on the second ring. Jennifer Walsh answered on the second ring. Her voice was sharp, alert. Who is this? My name is Thomas Morrison. I'm a royal guard at Buckingham Palace. And I have evidence of a plot to harm Princess Charlotte. There was a pause. That's quite a claim, Mr. Morrison. I have photos, documents, evidence of payments. Everything you need. Meet me at the King's Cross Cafe in 30 minutes. Come alone. If this is real, we move fast. If it's not, her voice hardened. I'll make sure you regret wasting my time. The line went dead. Thomas looked at Hastings. It's done. Good luck, son, Hastings said quietly. You're doing the right thing. Thomas wasn't so sure anymore. But he left the library and made his way to King's Cross. The rain had turned into a steady downpour. The city felt cold and hostile. Jennifer Walsh was already waiting when he arrived. She sat in the corner booth, a cup of tea untouched in front of her. She was younger than Thomas expected, maybe 40, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. Thomas sat down across from her. Show me, she said. Thomas pulled out his phone and placed it on the table. He scrolled through the photos. The journal entry, the email, the floor plan, everything. Jennifer studied each image carefully. Her expression never changed. When she finished, she looked up at Thomas. Do you understand what you're giving me? Yes, this will destroy you. The palace will deny everything. They'll call you a liar, a traitor, possibly mentally unstable. You'll never work in security again. Your name will be dragged through every newspaper in the country, I know. Then why are you doing this? Thomas thought of Charlotte. Her smile at public events. The way she waved to crowds. 8 years old. Innocent. 'Cause she's a little girl, he said simply. And someone needs to protect her. Jennifer nodded slowly. All right. I'll need to verify some of this. I'll need to speak with Hastings. And I'll need you to go on record. How long will that take? If I push, I can have a story ready by morning. We'll publish online first, then print. Once it's out there, it can't be stopped. Thomas felt a weight lift slightly from his chest. Do it. Jennifer gathered her things. One more thing. Where are you staying tonight? They'll come looking for you. I don't know. I can't go home. She slid a key across the table. Safe house. Address is on the tag. Go there. Don't contact anyone. I'll call you when the story is live. Thomas took the key. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Jennifer said. This is just the beginning. Thomas spent that night in the safe house, a small flat in South London. He couldn't sleep. Every sound outside made him jump. Every car that passed felt like they'd found him. He checked his phone constantly. No messages from Hastings. No messages from Jennifer. Just silence. At 3 a.m, he finally dozed off on the couch. He woke to his phone ringing. Dawn light filtered through the windows. Jennifer's name flashed on the screen. It's live, she said. Front page of our website. The story is everywhere. Twitter is exploding. Other news outlets are picking it up. Thomas pulled up the article on his phone. The headline read, Royal Guard exposes alleged plot against Princess Charlotte Palace in crisis. Below it was his photo. His name, his statement, his life laid bare for the world to see. What happens now? Thomas asked. Now we wait. The palace will have to respond. And if they try to ignore it, the pressure will build until they can't. Thomas ended the call and turned on the television. Every news channel was running the story. His face appeared again and again. Experts debated whether it was credible. Royal commentators looked shocked. Some called him a hero. Others called him a disgrace. His phone began to buzz constantly. Messages from people he hadn't spoken to in years. Reporters requesting interviews. Threats from people calling him a liar. Then one message made him freeze. It was from Hastings. Charlotte safe. Family dinner canceled. They're investigating. You did it. Thomas read the message 3 times. Charlotte was safe. That was all that mattered. But he knew the fight wasn't over. At noon, Buckingham Palace released an official statement. Thomas watched it live on television. A spokesperson stood before cameras and reporters. The palace courtyard was packed. Buckingham Palace takes all security matters seriously, the spokesperson read from a prepared statement. We are aware of the allegations made by former guard Thomas Morrison. A full investigation is underway. We can confirm that Princess Charlotte is safe and well. The family dinner scheduled for this evening has been postponed out of an abundance of caution. Former guard, Thomas muttered. So they'd already fired him, the spokesperson continued. We want to be clear that these allegations are currently unsubstantiated. However, until the investigation is complete, certain individuals have been placed on temporary leave, including consultant Elena Volkov. The crowd of reporters erupted with questions. Is the Queen Consort being investigated? Was there really a plot? Where is Elena Volkov now? The spokesperson raised a hand. That's all we can say at this time. Thank you. Thomas watched the chaos on screen. He'd started something that couldn't be stopped now. The truth would come out, one way or another. His phone rang again. Unknown number, he answered cautiously. Hello? Mr. Morrison. The voice was familiar, formal. Said Edward Chapman, private secretary to the Prince of Wales. His Royal Highness would like to speak with you. In person. Today. Thomas's heart raced. Prince William wants to see me. Yes, immediately. Can you come to Kensington Palace within the hour? Thomas looked at the safe house key in his hand. Then at the television, where his face was still being broadcast across the nation. Yes, he said. I'll be there. Thomas arrived at Kensington Palace an hour later. His hands were sweating. His heart hammered in his chest. Security escorted him through a private entrance. Away from the reporters, camped outside, the main gates. They led him to a sitting room. Elegant. Quiet. Through the windows, he could see the palace gardens. The door opened. Prince William walked in. He was alone. No advisors. No security. Just him. Thomas stood immediately and bowed. William gestured to a chair. Please, sit. Thomas sat. William took the chair across from him. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, William broke the silence. I've read your statement. I've seen the evidence. Commander Hastings briefed me this morning. Sir, William held up a hand. Let me speak first. His voice was measured but firm. What you did was dangerous? You broke protocol. You accessed private areas without authorization. You went to the press before coming to the family. Thomas felt his stomach sink. Yes, sir. But... William leaned forward. You also may have saved my daughter's life. The two men locked eyes. I need to know, William said quietly. Everything you heard that night, every detail. Don't leave anything out, Thomas told him. Every word from that conversation outside the sitting room, every piece of evidence he'd found, every moment of fear and doubt, William listened without interruption. His jaw tightened as the story unfolded. When Thomas finished, William stood and walked to the window. My father's wife, William said, his voice barely above a whisper. I knew there was tension. I knew she resented Catherine, resented our children's popularity. But this turned back. This is unforgivable. What happens now, sir? William's expression hardened. Now we make sure this never happens again. Alina Volkov has disappeared. She left the country this morning before we could detain her. But we have people looking. She will be found, and the Queen Consort. William's face became unreadable. That is complicated. My father refuses to believe she was involved. He thinks Volkov acted alone, manipulated information, deceived Camilla. But the journal entry, I know. William's voice carried an edge of frustration. I know what the evidence shows. But my father is in denial. And without Volkov to testify, without concrete proof of Camilla's direct involvement, it's her word against yours. Thomas felt defeat wash over him. So nothing happens to her? I didn't say that. William returned to his chair. My father may be in denial, but I am not. And neither is Catherine. Camilla will never be allowed near our children again. Not alone. Not without security present. Not ever. That I promise you. He paused. There are also other measures being put in place. Quietly, Camilla's access to certain areas of the palace will be restricted. Her staff will be replaced. Her activities will be monitored. She won't be formally charged, but she will be contained. Is that enough, sir? William's eyes were steel. It has to be. For now. The monarchy is fragile, Morrison. One scandal after another, and the public loses faith. We have to be strategic. Careful. What about me? You've been terminated from palace service. That won't change. Too many people know you broke protocol, but... William pulled an envelope from his jacket. This is a letter of recommendation from me personally. It will open doors for you in private security. In this, he placed a check on the table, is compensation for your service, for your sacrifice. Thomas looked at the check. It was for £50,000. I don't want money, sir. I just wanted to protect Charlotte. I know, William said softly. That's why you deserve it. Most men in your position would have stayed silent. You didn't. That takes courage. William stood. Thomas stood with him. My daughter is safe because of you, William said. I won't forget that. Neither will Catherine. We are in your debt. He extended his hand. Thomas shook it. Thank you, sir. William nodded. One more thing. The press will hound you for months. Maybe years. Stay strong. Don't sell your story to tabloids. Keep your dignity. That's the best revenge against people who will try to destroy you. I will, sir. William walked Thomas to the door. As Thomas was leaving, William called after him. Morrison. Thomas turned. If you ever need anything. Anything at all? You have my private number in that envelope. Use it. Thomas left Kensington Palace feeling lighter than he had in days. The rain had finally stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds. His phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer Walsh. Scotland Yard. Just arrested someone trying to leave the country from a private airfield. Female. Matches Volkov's description. You did it. Thomas smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. 3 months later, the full story came out. Alina Volkov was actually Alina Kuzlova, a former intelligence operative with ties to organized crime. She'd been hired by Camilla through an intermediary to handle the Charlotte situation. The intermediary had since disappeared. Volkov was extradited and charged with conspiracy to commit murder, among other crimes. She eventually took a plea deal and testified against the intermediary. Camilla maintained her innocence. No charges were ever filed against her, but the court of public opinion was merciless. Thomas watched it all from a distance. He'd moved to Scotland, taken a job with a private security firm. The job was quiet, dignified, no palace politics, no dark plots. Sometimes late at night, he wondered if he'd done the right thing. If exposing everything had been worth it, then he'd see Charlotte on television. At a school event, at a charity function, smiling, alive, safe. And he knew. One afternoon, a package arrived at his door. Inside was a handwritten note and a photograph. The photograph showed Charlotte smiling at the camera. On the back, in a child's handwriting, it read, "Thank you for keeping me safe. Love, Charlotte." The note was from Catherine, Princess of Wales. It was simple. "We will never forget what you did for our family. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts." Thomas placed both items on his mantle. Beside them, he put the letter of recommendation from William. They were the only reminders he kept of his time at the palace. The only pieces of that chapter of his life he wanted to remember because, in the end, Thomas Morrison had done what few people ever do. He'd stood up against power. He'd risked everything for what was right, and he'd won, not in the way he'd expected, not without cost. But he'd won the only battle that truly mattered. He'd saved a little girl's life, and that, Thomas knew, was worth everything.